This month's SPE WEBxtra is brought to you by Wheatstone, maker of the intelligent IP audio network used by studios around the globe. The AES-67 compatible WheatNet IP intelligent network is the most comprehensive end-to-end studio network system in the world, with a full line of consoles, software apps, IP audio appliances, and third-party add-ons for any studio workflow, size, or purpose. Wheatstone. Well, good afternoon. I'm Chris Scher, Member Communications Director of the Society of Broadcast Engineers and the co-host of this month's episode of the SPE WEBxtra, the SPE chapter of the web. This is a monthly SPE meeting, and we usually try to have it on the third Monday of the month. We shifted a day this month because of the Martin Luther King holiday. We're glad you're with us. The SPE is the Association for Broadcast and Multimedia Technology Professionals, with about 5,000 members, mostly in the U.S., but also around the world. The host of today's SPE WEBxtra is SPE board member Kevin Trueblood, who is also the National Secretary and Chair of the SPE Government Relations Committee. Hi, Kevin. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Chris. I wear a lot of different hats, but I'm excited to add this web host or this web stream host to my resume as well. So it's great to be here today. And I'm excited because today we're going to be talking to Larry Schindel, who's a senior product manager of Linear Acoustic, about next generation television audio. And there's a lot to dive into. So we're going to get to that in just a couple of moments. But first, Chris, I believe you have some business to take care of.
I do. Here's your SPE member update for January 21, 2020. We have several webinars by SPE on the calendar. First, tomorrow on January 22, you can catch the Manager's Engineering Notebook. Paul Tinkle, president of Thunderbolt Broadcasting World Headquarters, presents 44 tips to help all managers with broadcast engineering. On February 13, Wireshark Troubleshooting is presented by Stephen Poole, the Market Chief Engineer for Crawford Broadcasting. This second session continues by discussing smart filters in Wireshark. February 25 brings us Module 1 of the new Audio over IP series. This one starts with a review of IP networking fundamentals found in and required by an IP network infrastructure supporting real-time media content. The RF201 series continues on March 12 with TV combiners. And on March 24, the Audio over IP series continues with Module 2, AO IP Basics. For more information on webinars by SPE, go to spe.org/webinars. Looking further into 2020, the SPE will again present the Leadership Development Course, August 4 to 6 in Atlanta. You can learn more and register to attend at spe.org/LDC. The SPE has presented the course since 1997. Rodney Vandeveer, a professor of organizational leadership and supervision at Purdue University, brings more than 30 years of industrial and business experience in management positions in human resources, training and development, and manufacturing. On the certification side, if you'd like to take an SPE certification exam, here are a couple of dates to add. The next local exams will be held at chapters the week of February 7. Unfortunately, the application deadline was last month, so if you didn't apply, don't worry, there are more windows coming up. The SPE certification exams will also be held at the NAB show on April 21. The application deadline for that is March 9th. If a local chapter exam is not convenient for you, private proctoring is available. Contact the SPE National Office for more details. And again, it's all at spe.org/certification. Finally, the SPE is mailing dues renewal notices today, so look for it in your mailbox shortly. SPE membership for the year begins on April 1, but don't wait until the last minute to renew and risk losing your member benefits. Also, you already know that the SPE launched SPE Member Plus in 2018. The SPE Member Plus benefits are now available to SPE Life and student members. And that is your SPE member update for January 21, 2020. Kevin?
You're excellent at the business portion of this, Chris, so thank you very much. All right, so our guest today, I'm excited about this because as somebody who is now watching or taking over a television station, there is a lot to learn when you go from radio to television side of things. And I'm excited to learn about what's coming next for television broadcasters as we enter things like ATSC 3, immersive audio, and just everything that is possible for broadcasters and for even for over-the-top viewership. That's why our guest today is Larry Schindel. He is the Senior Product Manager of Linear Acoustic. Larry, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. Good afternoon. I wanted to talk a little bit today. It's probably a little bit higher level than a lot of the SPE webinars, web series that you're doing here. But this will give you a good overview of where things are headed over the next year or two with TV audio.
And there's a lot that's coming too, because television started out, when you go back into the days where we all had Optimods installed, and then we all went to 5.1 audio with HD, and now we're entering a whole, that's why we call it next generation broadcasting. There is a lot of possibilities, and that's kind of where you guys come in to really kind of break this down for broadcasters. And I know you have a very technical, or as you said, we're going to go into a little bit of detail, but at a high level, what kinds of things are we looking at that are possible in the next generation of broadcasting?
Some of the things that are possible are not only immersive audio, but personalized audio. So being able to select, make the audio experience what you want to have at home. So if it's a sporting event, what team announcer do you want to listen to? Do you want more of you're seated in the stands courtside experience, or one where you're further back in the venue type of experience? And those are just some of the things around sporting events that we'll see happening. But think of this in other regions where they do a lot of multi-language broadcasting as well. There's certain in parts of the world where they broadcast programs in 11 different languages. So having a personalization aspect will really make things much more efficient and give the consumer a better experience.
So as it stands today, most television broadcasters are using either stereo audio or 5.1 audio, and it's just what we call, it's the Dolby AC3 standard. That's what we've got today.
Here in North America, yes, we're using Dolby AC3 which is they call Dolby Digital, for over-the-air transmission. Now, if it's a complete end-to-end system that's not over-the-air broadcast, then somebody may use a different audio code, such as Dolby Digital Plus here in North America, or other ones, other codecs in other parts of the world. But yeah, here in North America, primarily Dolby Digital.
So I guess where do we begin on this topic? So we've got the fundamentals. This is where we are now. Most stations are transmitting stereo, 5.1. Maybe they're doing SAP, and a lot of stations are required to transmit descriptive audio, or they're doing secondary audio like Spanish. We've got a lot of that. We're just transmitting the 8 channels right now. That's pretty much what you're going to get. And if you hit the wrong button, you're going to be hearing your shows in Spanish and not have any idea why.
Exactly. So that's where we're at today. Going forward, as you get into things of immersive audio or object-based audio for personalization, it gets really neat. Actually, you can be doing, you can do a different type of workflow of what's actually called receiver mixing. So you'll be able to send like a music and effects bed mix to the viewer, along with individual elements that would be the dialogues. So your English dialogue, your Spanish dialogue, your video descriptive service, all those in there, and using the UI on their receiving device, the viewer will be able to select exactly which of those they want to hear quite easily. One of the
now, I want to make sure I get this time. I want to make sure I get this term correctly. You referred to it a couple of times. The object-based encoding, right? Is that the term you were using?
Yes. And there's really a couple different ways to handle audio now going forward. What we've been doing so far all along has been what we call channel-based audio. So you have your left and your right speaker. You have your left, center, right, left surround, right surround, and LFE in your 5.1 system. So those are channels. Those are fixed locations with fixed audio going to them. Object-based audio is a little bit different, and it might take a little bit to wrap your head around exactly what object-based audio is. But essentially, object-based audio, each audio element is its own object. And with that comes additional metadata. And I know I'm saying the big, scary M word that everybody loves to hate, but it's going to become much more important as we move to next generation audio, but it's also going to be easier to author and set correctly. So with each audio element, there is metadata associated with it. And this metadata includes stuff, information like what level to reproduce it at, X, Y, Z positioning data. So where should this sound come from in your audio field? How do we replicate that? Along with possibly information about the size of the element. Is it a very small pinpoint element like a knock on a door, or is it something larger like Godzilla roaring down on you? So there's information about that's included in there. And broadcasters.
So there's a lot that's possible.
Very much, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we're diving into. I mean, we can dive, as far as we want to into it. And you brought a few slides too that you wanted to kind of show off to kind of visualize where this was and where we're going.
Yeah. Let me see. One second to get to the.
But in the meantime, I did like that for those that may be kind of unfamiliar, because me personally, I came to a television from the radio side. When we talk about the different channels of audio, there is a standard where, as we said, there's 8 channels of audio going out. And now as we get more into the object-based, as Larry called it, now we're getting more into each different file, each different thing that you're playing in non-linear time or in linear broadcasting. We can have that different experience, that total immersive audio experience, and that's definitely where we're headed, and that's what you're talking about, right, Larry?
Yes, actually, and actually, I'll have a slide here that will kind of give a description of, show you what channel-based, visual descriptive channel-based audio here. So here you can see what would be a 7-1 system in this very crude drawing of mine, of your left, center, and right speaker up front, LFE, your left surround, right surround, and then your back channels. The next slide actually shows what it is with object-based audio. So instead of just the sound being mixed to those output channels, the objects can be anywhere in the 3-dimensional space, and this gets a little bit into immersive audio, but this same concept applies to height level channels as well. But you can see that the audio elements are represented graphically in the slide, so that they are still there, and you can see where they're at and different sizes and positioning, and you can see the metadata that would be associated, tagged with each element. Now,
and the metadata is actually going to be telling each speaker in the receiver what audio is playing for each element. That's correct? It is.
And this all started in the cinema space. So in the cinema space, in an immersive room, such as a Dolby Atmos room or DTSX room, they have many speakers located in there. Each speaker is amplified individually, and they have equipment in the projection booth that knows how many speakers there are in the theater, where they're located. And so it knows how to do a real-time mixdown or render of all the objects that are in the soundtrack and look at their positional metadata and know how to mix that down so that it sounds like it's coming from where the director intended it to come from. In the cinema, that's in a cinema space where they have a lot more equipment and power resources than your average consumer. The consumer experience definitely is simpler, but it still gives a very compelling experience as well.
So that's something that's going to be up to each producer and each television station to make sure that that data is all encoded properly. And that's where I imagine a lot of this confusion is going to come in, because is there going to be a standard that's set for these kinds of things?
There are some standards. One thing that I forgot to mention is that these audio tracks can be a combination, actually, of channel-based audio and object-based audio. And in cinema, you typically see that. Well, they'll typically have a 916 kind of a channel-based mix, but used objects as effects around there. On the TV side, we're really narrowing into a 5.1 plus 4 immersive type channel-based workflow. And with that, the objects will be supported, and including the 3D positioning data on there. But there are standards. Certain technologies will support the object-based audio, like here in North America, AC4 for the ATSC 3 services will eventually support object audio and channel-based audio. MPEG-H is a competing format. It's also adopted in ATSC 3. You'll find MPEG-H used in South Korea, where Dolby Atmos is used. AC4 is used here in North America for that, but they provide similar functionality.
See, and I love this, because everything that I've been heard to date when I've gotten into discussions about ATSC 3 is, well, how do I do ATSC 3? And the first question always comes up, well, what do you want to do with it? Because there's a lot of possibilities, and this really fits into exactly what you're talking about, where there are tons of possibilities that go with the video and the audio component, which can be just as important.
Exactly. On the audio side, your audio can be basic 5.1 or stereo if you want it to be, and for certain types of programming, it absolutely makes sense to be. It also supports immersive audio, or personalized audio are also supported in ATSC 3. So it really depends on what you want to do with it. I think what we'll see is, in practice, is kind of a stand or crawl, stand, walk type scenario. So broadcasters may start out simulcasting exactly the audio they have on their ATSC 1 services, channel-based, either stereo or 5.1, and you'll find an AC4 encoder in parallel with the AC3 encoder, and the AC4 will encode audio for your ATSC 3 broadcast. But the broadcaster will, and the networks will provide additional content going forward that will be immersive-based content, such as the Olympics this year, perhaps. Where can you get immersive-based audio? Obviously in a cinema, but online and Blu-ray DT services today. Your Netflix, Amazon Prime. There's music services like this today, but it's coming to broadcast TV.
So people are going to be able to put up an antenna, and this is the future that's coming with ATSC 3. People are going to be able to put up an antenna and basically get a lot of these same experiences if they're watching. This would be huge for the Super Bowl, for example, where you'd be able to follow a microphone that's solely on the coach, which that would be amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And in I think NASCAR is probably would be a good example here. Where they have radios on the different drivers, and you can listen to the different teams. Personalized audio would allow you to select, which of the, say, 5 drivers out on the course are allowing you to listen to their communications between the driver and the pit crew. Having a simple selector in the UI, which pops up on the screen, would be a great aspect of personalization for this.
Well, and that brings a technical question that then I have is, as far as transmitting it as it stands, when we broadcast our audio, your TV is getting every channel of audio, whether you ask for it or not. You just get to pick which one you want. Now, in this case, where you talk about metadata being in the mix, does it mean that the transmitter or the internet or whatever is only sending the audio track that you are requesting? You're not sending everything at once?
No, you're still sending everything at once. And the receiver will simply ignore what's in a bit stream that you don't want. But also with these newer audio codecs, they're more bandwidth efficient. So you can send more amount of data in the same amount of space or less. And additionally, ATSC 3 is built differently. It's built on an IP backbone. So unlike an MPEG-2 transport stream, ATSC 3 is built on IP packets and uses hash to handle a lot of that. So, there are alternate ways in theory that you can deliver data as well, perhaps across the internet or some side chain of delivering an additional path for some of this content. Perhaps that could even be, an upsell for some of these things.
So the world is effectively your oyster, but for a station level, I guess, where would they actually start with putting something like this in? Is this going to be possible right away with an ATSC 3 encoder, or how would they actually start getting into this?
So let's see. So it's pretty easy. I mean, right now we need to the requirements are simulcast an ATSC 1 service with an ATSC 3 or some simulcast in there. Here you can see today what an ATSC 3 workflow is. So you would have your 5.1 English and your stereo Spanish that get transmitted. But you can put in for ATSC 3 services, you can actually put in an AC4 encoder in parallel with what you're receiving and get that same content up on your ATSC service quickly. So here you would see AC3 and AC4 encoding in parallel for that. So that's kind of the, now you're at the stand here. And then going on, you'll be able to update your encoders to be able to handle the advanced features of ATSC 3 audio, either AC4 or MPEG-H, depending on the region, so that you can actually send out a 5.1 AC3 English stereo, AC3 Spanish, or VDS, but then also send out for your ATSC service a 5.1 music and effect bed, plus your 2 individual dialogues and your VDS audio, all in what essentially would be lower data rate than your ATSC 1 service would be. Now, another thought process is, since the efficiencies of the AC4 codec are greatly improved, the broadcaster could also send out multiple languages already as a complete main mix. So you transmit multiple 5.1s of your English and Spanish, and send a VDS service along and allow the users to add that in when they want. That's another way to tackle this problem. It really comes down to the broadcaster's preference and how they want to do it.
Well, there certainly is a lot that's involved, and we're going to take a whole lot more dive into this conversation about next generation television audio with Larry Schindel. He's our guest from Linear Acoustic. Chris, I believe you got a little bit of business for us first.
Yeah, once again, the SPE WEBxtra is made possible by the generous support of our sponsor, Wheatstone, and the SPE WEBxtra will take a break. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Jay with Wheatstone. What I want to demo for you today is a Cisco switch failure. And the best way I can do that is to reach around the back here and unplug a cable. Okay, you'll see now I have some of the stuff is still working. We've lost an Air Studio over here. We've lost some production rooms. So while you're taking a look at that, I'm frantically going to go over here and start replacing some Cat5 cables. If you look right here, I know this was the transmission path for half of the system. So by simply plugging these in, you're going to see some audio return. We've got audio restored on every single surface here in the system. By configuring your Cisco switches so you can load share and put half the network on one switch and half the network on the other switch, this will allow you at least to get around a switch failure. Thanks for watching.
Well, once again, we thank Wheatstone for sponsoring the SPE WEBxtra. Did you know that by watching this webcast, you earned 1/2 of an SPE recertification point when you recertify? Keep that in mind. Make a note of it. So when your recertification comes time to be renewed, you can quickly and easily remember it. Let's get back to SPE Secretary Kevin Trueblood and Larry Schindel.
I'm curious if we get like super extra credits for hosting and for being a guest on this program.
Absolutely. You get a 1/2 point. Congratulations.
Hey, all right. Wonderful.
Excellent.
All right. Our guest is Larry Schindel. He is a senior product manager from Linear Acoustic. We are talking next generation television audio. And there is a lot involved, and it's super exciting stuff because not only are we getting upgraded picture, we're starting to see 4K, but there's a lot more options available audio, and that's where we're going beyond just the 5.1 that you've got now, that's or the stereo television audio that you're transmitting. Now there's the ability to embed so many more streams, and that's where Larry comes in, because there's a whole lot involved in actually making this happen, right? I mean, behind the scenes.
There is, although it's not quite as complicated as you might think. Again, I'm going to get back to the dreaded M word, metadata. And really, metadata is going to be important, and it's because, imagine if you're sending 16 channels of audio to an encoder, you have to identify what those channels are so that downstream devices know what they need to do with them. So you need to be able to identify it. You know, if you look at the top line here,
right? Because your receiver is not going to know what to do with a particular channel of audio if we are indeed getting away from a specifically defined channel where, you know, as we talk about 5.1, each one of those channels is clearly defined. The receiver knows what to do with each channel. Now we're getting into the world of, well, you can put this channel on this speaker and that channel on that one. So you have to, your receiver needs to be able to know what to do with it. And that's why that metadata is there, right?
Absolutely. So, I mean, you would need to identify if, you know, this is my 5.1 bed mix. This is my music and effects. You know, this is my English dialogue channel. This is my VDS audio. This is my Spanish announce. So it just comes down to even basically identifying what channel of audio feeding into the encoder or to your receiver is actually what.
We didn't actually get into the details. There was a slide on the screen that was talking about the Bitstream mixing, and I wanted to give you a chance to kind of explain what it was we were actually looking at.
Right. If we put that same slide back up, and the top half of what you see there in this diagram is what we're doing today. So you're sending a 5.1 complete mix out and a stereo complete mix Spanish out to the encoder. Those are 2 bit streams. Each one goes in a different PID in your transport stream and out to the receiver. Looking at the bottom line, this is where we get into some of the next generation audio, where you can send a 5.1 channel bed along with your individual dialogues, your ref mic, so you can either choose to bring that into the final mix that your receiver does or not, or the venue PA. All those get encoded into one single bit stream, and based on the metadata that's authored in the bit stream and the combination of that metadata and the user's preferences they set in the receiver will actually generate the final mix that gets listened to by the viewer. And you'll see this available in ATSC 3 televisions and receivers going forward.
And no matter the receiver, if you've got just a basic television with just a stereo set of speakers and that's all you've got, it's going to be able to pick all this out and give you a mixed down version, much like what we have now.
There will be devices that will do that. So like a set-top box or something, or a gateway type device that will do that. But ultimately, your TVs and receivers today, as they stand, won't receive an ATSC 3 signal and know what to do with it at all. That includes video. That's not just audio. It's a completely different transport mechanism. It's not based around MPEG-2 transport streams. It's based around IP packets.
Yeah, I keep hearing the word dongle being tossed around as what's people are going to end up having, like the old set-top converters when we went from analog to digital broadcast. That's what everybody had.
Exactly.
But that's going to be but all that's going to be embedded within the over-the-air stream. Or if they choose to watch something over the top, as we saw that list earlier that had like Netflix and Disney Plus and things like that. All of those assets that you can watch, if you want to pull up The Simpsons on it, that'll have everything you want there right there in that stream.
Absolutely. And that's a perfect example is these media players and your mobile phone or your tablet will be able to receive this type of signal. I mean, from the gateway. There will be gateway devices that can receive an ATSC 3 signal and essentially transmit those across your Wi-Fi because it's just an IP packet to them. So your phone and your tablet with the proper app, you'll be able to receive that programming very easily as well.
And you had a couple more slides you wanted to show off as well, and I'll give you a chance to bring those up.
Yeah. 24. I was talking a little bit about AC4. AC4 is the next generation codec that will actually be used in ATSC 3. One kind of important feature for AC4, in addition to the higher efficiency and dialogue enhancement for the hearing impaired and supporting immersive workflows and personalization workflows, is the fact that this is a video aware codec. So what that means is when you go to encode a signal, you can apply a video reference to it, either through SDI or the old analog VREF or TripleSync if you want to go that way. And the encoder will make the audio packet the same size as a video packet so that it routes and switches through your facility without trashing packets. An AC3 packet, a Dolby Digital packet, is based on a number of samples, 1536. And so how that lines up with your video frame boundaries is completely random. So what happens as you switch AC3 is there's always going to be a couple of corrupted packets on either side of that switch. AC4 is being video aware, will make that packet fit within the video frame. And so that it's seamless, perfect switching. You actually switch in a spot of zero data in between the various data packets. So that's also
are you describing it sounds like a little bit of forward error correction, or that it's going to be able to keep everything in perfect lockstep, that if there's any kind of dropouts or anything like that, it's going to be able to repair that?
Yeah, and it'll make your transitions between your various program elements, your commercial, your interstitials. It will allow you to have error-free switch points, which you don't have now with AC3.
Correct. Right. And so that would give you the ability. This is where we talk about, what do you want to do with ATSC 3? It would make things a little bit more seamless if you're inserting local content for a geolocated area or something like that. That would make not only the video look good, but the audio look good. That's what you're talking about.
Correct. Big improvement from where things are today with that.
Okay, and you got a few more slides to show off too. Kind of showing off the more technical and getting into the nuts and bolts of what it actually is.
Yeah. Well, I'll give a little bit of an overview of where ATSC 3 is currently. I'd like to do that as well. There are several test markets. I believe 8 of them up. Including one in Cleveland, WRAL down in Raleigh-Durham, and a large multi-station test market in Phoenix. But this year there was is a commercial launch here in the U.S. for ATSC 3. It's being branded as NextGen TV by the Consumer Technology Association for consumer awareness. So that NextGen TV logo is what consumers should look for when they go to look for an ATSC 3 receiver or equipment that ATSC 3 ready and compatible and ready to go. I was recently at the CES a few weeks ago, and between Sony, LG, and Samsung, they announced 20 different television sets will be available this year for the ATSC 3 broadcast, and I saw at least one set-top box there as well. So for a standard that's an optional standard for broadcasters to adopt at this point, that's really a great momentum for the launch.
Yeah, that really surprised me because I think that's one thing that broadcasters were holding on to was, well, we're going to put this transmission out that nobody's going to see because there are no receivers available. But as you said, at CES, we now have a number of different options that are going to be available within this year. So this is actually finally happening.
Correct, it is. And it's planned to have 60 markets. ATSC 3 services launched in 60 markets across the U.S. this year, all of which include the top 40 markets. So again, it's going to be a busy year and a significant year to roll out ATSC 3. So it's it's an exciting time to be in this market.
Now, Linear Acoustics is one of the things that you do is obviously audio processing for television stations. So with all of this involved, when we have all of this multi-channel experience, are we actually talking about having to process all of those individual channels as well? I mean, where does that come in? Or is that more that there's just a standard of normalization and that's what you have to adhere to?
Well, there's a few different ways to approach this. AC4 includes Dolby's real-time loudness leveling algorithm. So it's kind of built into the AC4 codec. Companies like ours also create real-time loudness control solutions and file-based loudness control solutions that many broadcasters use and like the quality of our sound. So, we're hoping that a lot of the broadcasters will continue to use equipment such as ours, but it's built into the algorithms, into the codecs as it exists today.
Do we still get to use the word dial norm? Because that's become like the standard terminology that we all use.
Yes. Dial norm
all right.
Still exists. Yeah.
So is there anything else that you were willing to share with us as we really get into this? We're actually getting into this ATSC 3 broadcasting.
Just a few things. You'll hear a lot of terms thrown around: Atmos and immersive and personalized and ATSC 3. One thing to keep in mind is, Dolby Atmos is not ATSC 3. And it's not AC4. They're all individual different things, but they all work together. With Dolby Atmos, Dolby Atmos is Dolby's branding for an immersive audio experience. That can be delivered to consumer different ways. That can be delivered in a Dolby Cinema experience. It can be delivered at home with using Dolby Digital Plus today with some of the channel-based, which is how you've watched NBC, Notre Dame football on NBC and the Toronto Raptors games on DirecTV. That's being broadcast in Dolby Atmos today, along with NHRA. Those are being delivered via Digital Plus as one technology. AC4 as another technology will support delivery of Dolby Atmos. So Atmos is not the same as AC4, and it's not the same as Dolby Digital Plus, and it's certainly not all the same as ATSC 3, but they all work together, and they're all compatible.
So how do you see local stations actually starting to install these options and getting more into this multi-channel audio? Do you see this as stations themselves mixing it, say with a news broadcast or whatever productions they're doing, or do you see it more as this will be on a network level that stations will pass through?
I think for a lot of the immersive content and some of the personalized content, you'll see a lot of that come from the network. And from other large content creators and get passed through. Certainly there are times and places to use immersive audio. Your local news is not really one of those, so it would not be applicable there. But it's, local content surely can be produced in AC4 or personalized, again, looking at languages and visually and VDS service, primarily as personalization aspects there. But really, a lot of the audio workflows are not going to be that different. It's just you're going to be adding additional channels. You'll need to identify them, especially if they're objects, to feed the encoder. But it's not as big and ugly and scary as one might think it will be.
And it sounds like in the Olympics that are coming up in Tokyo later this year, they're going to be using a lot of this technology.
They are. Last year at NAB, yes, which is the host broadcaster for the Olympics, their Olympic broadcasting services, they announced that they will make the events, all of the events in this summer's games, available to the rights-holding broadcasters in immersive audio. And again, immersive audio is the generic term, much like tissue is to Kleenex, a brand name. Here in North America, Dolby Atmos is the brand name we're familiar with. MPEG-H, which is, again, a competing technology against Dolby AC4. MPEG-H is used in South Korea for their ATSC 3 broadcast and used in the regions around the world as well. They will be doing immersive audio in MPEG-H in those various regions for the Olympic broadcast.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think that's a big component of NBC's streaming service Peacock that's supposed to be launching later this spring, that they'll have a lot of these elements in there and maybe we'll see by the 2022 Olympics, the Winter Olympics, we'll see local stations actually passing that as well.
That would be great. And I think as we get into ATSC 3 services being more common, definitely think we will see that being available in more of the traditional broadcast type content instead of just the streaming and online services. But streaming and online services, they can kind of move a little bit quicker, especially if they own the encode side and the sort of decode side of the device. They can really move things around to give the viewer the experience the broadcaster wants them to have much quicker.
So you were at CES. Did you see a lot of equipment that was actually able to decode a lot of this already?
There were several TVs that were able to decode ATSC 3 services today. The ones that I saw primarily were in ATSC's booth. at CES. ATSC did exhibit at CES. This was their first time exhibiting. They plan to exhibit there again next year. And Sony was there with the TV as well as others playing ATSC 3 content.
Well, in terms of the audio, I'm assuming you would need an audio receiver that's capable of doing this as well to what's going to actually be connected to the speakers, or is this something that the TV could then be attached to a sound bar that has 16 different speakers associated with it?
Yeah, the TV would do the primary decode in this case, and across an HDMI or other connection, pass the audio off to a soundbar. Or there's many ways to get an Atmos experience in your living room. I mean, just the receive devices today, even with Dolby Digital Plus, AV receivers, soundbars, your mobile devices, your tablets, your Roku, your media players, can all get an Atmos experience. Similarly, to reproduce that, you can go and install ceiling mount speakers if you want, but you don't have to. There are upfiring speakers that will reflect the sound, your height channels off the ceiling to you, so you don't need to go and modify your house to receive this. And there are plenty of sound bars available that will be able to do this for you. And
it can be just as easy too as having like headphones attached to your phone and then just selecting whichever audio experience you want out of that whole thing.
Correct. You know, you can get a Dolby Atmos experience on your mobile phone today. You know, there are these little smart speaker devices. Amazon started shipping one, I think, in December last year. The Echo Studio, which can give you an immersive experience off of a single smart speaker. Sony introduced a similar type product at CES themselves this year.
So we've got the Olympics that are coming. What else has been the big show at CES and at NAB that they've really shown off of what can be done with immersive audio?
For your live content, it's largely sports based. So the last 2 seasons, NBC has done the Notre Dame home football games in Dolby Atmos. Premier League in the UK has been doing all of their football matches, soccer matches for us in immersive audio, Dolby Atmos for a few years now. They're doing multiple games a week in this, so they have that down, that workflow down pretty solidly. NHRA, Toronto Raptors games being broadcast out to DirecTV in Atmos currently. So those are some of the big ones. Olympics, definitely. NBC had done certain events from the last 2 Olympics in Atmos as well. Some of them have been test broadcasts, but some of them have actually gone out to consumers.
All right, so I'll give you a chance. Is there any of the other slides that you wanted to show off, or anything else you wanted to mention as we talk about all this? What is possible, which just absolutely blows my mind. It really does.
I mean, I can put up a slide that just shows some of the other locations around the world where you can get Atmos, an immersive audio experience. And it's around the world. I mean, it's not only here in the U.S. It's you can get them in China, in Poland, in Russia, in Brazil, you know, in the U.K., in France. These are all locations where you can get an immersive audio service today. So it's coming, and it's just going to gain in popularity and become more and more ubiquitous. It's not as often a future as we might have thought.
I think that's the one big takeaway I've gotten from this so far is it's not coming, it's already here. It's just something that may be coming to broadcasters and may be possible as we get into ATSC 3. Yeah.
And the Atmos experience, the immersive experience, will tend to be married, at least initially, with 4K video, much like 5.1 surround was married with HD video back in the early days of ATSC 1, a decade plus. So it'll be premium content for a little while, but not forever.
Well, fantastic. Well, Larry, I really appreciate this discussion. Anything else you wanted to share before we wrap things up?
I'm just looking forward to the better experiences we're going to get with content and broadcast content over the next year, and all the improvements we're going to see.
Sounds like we're right there as we see the number of ATSC 3 stations starting to light up, and all of more production being done on the production side, where we're seeing, as you said, a lot of the sports and things like that. So it's already here, and hopefully we'll see it in more consumers' homes in the very near future. Larry, thank you so much for joining us. It has been a pleasure.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Well, Chris, I'll turn things back over to you, and thanks so much for having me today.
Sure. Thanks for hosting today's SPE WEBxtra, Kevin. And by the way, you asked if you got bonus points for hosting or presenting the WEBxtra. And actually, Larry, as the presenter, can claim points for providing a presentation. And that's a separate category from attending or watching. And all those details are at spe.org/certification. So again, to everybody else, thanks for watching today's SPE WEBxtra. This episode will be available on demand on the SPE YouTube channel. And as I had noted, you've just earned a half recertification point when you recertify your SPE certification. We again thank our sponsor, Wheatstone, for supporting the SPE WEBxtra. Watch for the announcement for next month's edition, the chapter of the web, the SPE WEBxtra. On behalf of Kevin Trueblood, I'm Chris Scherer, SPE Member Communications Director. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next month.